Today, we're diving into a powerful dissertation that uncovers a really startling crisis happening in the Twin Cities education system. It's a story about a promise that was broken, a really deep struggle, and an urgent call for accountability in the very schools that were designed to save a generation of Black children. This quote from Malcolm X, all the way back in 1962, sets a pretty grim stage. And the author of this research argues that this exact same systemic disregard, this same neglect, well, it's now been passed down to Black children, especially inside the institutions that are supposed to protect and nurture them.
And the numbers, they're just staggering. In the Twin Cities, Black students make up only about 10% of the student population, but they get hit with 41% of all suspensions and expulsions. So what does that mean? It means they are 8 times more likely to be pushed right out of the classroom than their white peers. This isn't just a gap, it's a chasm.
So what we're really looking at here is a system that is fundamentally failing its children. The data paints this picture, not of little problems here and there, but of a deep systemic breakdown.
Just look at this slide. It shows you the sheer scale of the disparity. You're looking at a nearly 40 percentage point gap in test scores between 4th grade Black students and their white classmates. This is one of the largest and most persistent achievement gaps in the entire country.
The author's conclusion on all this is blunt. For a struggling Black student in the Twin Cities, the system's default response isn't support, it's removal, it's redirection. It's a direct pipeline from the classroom right into the criminal justice system.
But, there was supposed to be a solution, an answer to this systemic failure. It was called the charter school movement, and it came with this powerful promise of real change.
And get this, Minnesota was actually the birthplace of the charter school movement. The first law was passed right here back in 1991. The whole idea was to create these educational laboratories, places for innovation that could break free from the bureaucracy of the big traditional districts.
So how are they different? Well, this table breaks it all down. Traditional public schools, they're managed by district boards with pretty limited flexibility. Charter schools, on the other hand, are run by their own independent boards. They have a lot of flexibility to innovate in exchange for performance-based accountability. The bet was that this freedom would let them succeed where the rigid system had failed. But it's a high-stakes bet. If they don't perform, they can be shut down.
Now, a really critical piece of this story is the identity of the leadership. The term Black-led isn't just about representation, it's about something much more fundamental. So here's the crucial point. A Black-led school isn't just a school that serves Black students. According to this research, it's an organization where Black leaders have complete control. They determine the mission, they control the budget, and they define the strategy. It's really all about ownership.
And this slide illustrates brilliantly that the idea of Black-led schools is part of a long, powerful legacy. For centuries, from independent churches to HBCUs, Black communities have built their own institutions as a means of liberation and self-determination when the existing systems failed them.
So if these Black-led charter schools were the modern embodiment of that legacy, the answer to a failing system, what went wrong? This is where the author introduces a startling and provocative frame for this crisis. He calls it a civil war.
And this is the central mystery driving this whole investigation. With all that promise, with that history of self-determination, why are these institutions struggling so profoundly?
And the failure is just stark. This chart shows the proficiency rates for Black-led charter schools in the Twin Cities. Typical rates rarely break 50%, but look at that slice for high proficiency, 70 to 100%. It's zero. Not a single Black-led charter school is achieving at that level, not one. So here, the author presents his core and very challenging thesis. He attests that this civil war on education for Black children isn't being caused by external forces like racism. Instead, he argues, it's fueled from within, by Black leaders who lack the acumen to build and sustain successful schools.
And he identifies a pattern of internal organizational failures. This includes unstable leadership, which leads to a lack of clear direction, a huge gap between the school's mission and what's actually happening in the classroom, toxic work cultures that drive away talented educators, and a complete lack of long-term strategic planning, leaving schools just adrift. These, he argues, are the root causes of the crisis.
Now, this isn't just an academic debate. To underscore what's truly at stake, the author frames his conclusion with a deep sense of personal urgency.
He shares a story from his childhood back in 1968, when his father asked him to spell the word college. It wasn't just a spelling test. In a world defined by racism, it was an act of rebellion. It was a question about whether he could envision a future beyond the limits society had placed on him. That one word represented a pathway to a whole different life.
And that brings us to this powerful quote from educator Ronald Edmonds. The point is, we already know what works. We have the tools to successfully teach all children. The failure isn't a failure of knowledge, it's a failure of will. It comes down to how we feel about the fact that we simply haven't done it yet.
So, we end where this whole research project began, with the author's own question. It's a question that demands answers, not just for academic purposes, but for the thousands of children whose futures depend on getting this right. It challenges all of us to look beyond blame and focus on what it will actually take to build schools that last.